Hi guys, and welcome to Just So Rare. A bit of a different video today, and I have my first guest. I'm delighted to announce Bithorse. Hello,
Hi there.
Bithorse.
Hi there.
Hi, pal. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me and being your first guest.
Excellent. The reason I'm so keen in getting you on, in particular, is obviously I've spoken to you off air and on Twitter and stuff. I'm aware that you're a new starter, and obviously, with your permission, I'd like to make this a bit of a mini series and keep checking up, like either monthly, just to see your progress.
Absolutely.
I don't know
think
what you
that's
think of
transparent,
that.
isn't it, really? Yeah. I think it's quite transparent for the new starters. Well, I've been on just over a month. I've been on now, so I class myself still as a new starter. Yeah.
Great stuff. Because I also think it's important for people like myself and many people who've been on the platform for a while to understand the difficulties you've got now as a new starter compared to when we started, because obviously prices of players are a lot higher now than when I started. And I just want to try and gauge how difficult it is for new starters, as I'm fully aware, if I started on the budget I did, I would struggle to start now, if I'm being truthful, you know.
Absolutely.
So I just want to get some idea on how you're trying to play the game and what tips you've picked up and etc. Firstly,
cool.
I'm going to call you Bitty, if that's okay.
That's the first.
Yeah. Either Bitty, pal, whatever. But my first question would be to you: how did you hear about Sorare, and why did you decide to join the platform?
So I heard about Sorare on a Twitch streamer's, not Twitch, he streams on Facebook. His name's Nepenthes. About December time, I think. But I thought I misheard him because I thought Sorare was a strange name. I wasn't sure of his actual company. So I Googled to find out what it was and found out it was fantasy football. And at that point, even though I know about cryptocurrency, I never actually knew what NFT stood for. So did some digging, found out about it, and I thought, okay, that's pretty cool. I enjoy football, anything to do with football. I enjoy, fantasy football, the Super Six, anything online. So it was well up my street. Didn't know how much you need to start with, but after starting for a month, it's a lot more than I thought you'd actually need to even get involved, really.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. It's like listening to you now as I'm speaking to you, I can tell like the enthusiasm you've got. I've still obviously got that. I honestly, my missus will tell you I drove her the nuts when I first started, because it was the only thing that because we were in lockdown, I had nothing else to do really. So it's so it's good to see.
That's a perfect time to start.
Absolutely, the enthusiasm is still there for new users as well coming on board. So that's great to hear. If you don't mind me asking, how much money did you start, or how much have you deposited in total since starting Sorare?
So I did some research, looked online to try and find out different things. So I don't know what my total is. I think is about £600. I'll be honest with you. But I started off, okay, I'll pick up a limited squad, which cost me about £100. Picked up I thought was a starting keeper, but he's not a starting keeper. He's probably third reserve or something like that. So I didn't do really much research, but I just wanted to get entered. So you need at least a keeper to start. So I was like, cool, I'll do that. Then I moved on to doing an American limited. I thought if I get these early enough, they're pretty cheap. Again, that was about 150. I've sold them all now for probably double, 3 times that now, just because I wanted to increase my budget. Then I moved on to rares, and this is all within a month. Over to rares after watching Sorare a budget on Threshold yielding. So now I've built a rare team from selling most of my limiteds. So yeah, I'd say between 600 and 700. I'd say so. Yes, it's pretty double what most people start with, but from what I've seen with they're the players I've never heard of. Like you mentioned off air to me, these are not mainstream players that you're picking up for 100 quid or whatever. It's like an unknown player who's hit and miss, but that's what you've got to deal with.
Absolutely. But that's the sort of thing I get more enjoyment out of, to be honest. Even if I had thousands of pounds, I would still get more enjoyment of finding these players who are playing in Turkey, for argument's sake, because not a lot of people know them, and that requires a bit of time and research and perhaps a bit of skill to identify them. Buying Neymars, there's no skill involved in that. It's easy, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, in terms of you saying you've gone from a limited team to a rare team, with this game week 250 that's coming out now, where obviously you can put a team in full of limiteds, which is obviously a lot cheaper than you would be if you were putting rare players in. Has that changed your opinion now? Are you thinking, for example, maybe I acted a bit too swiftly in getting rid of the limited cards to buy rares to get an F grinding team?
That's a good point, but no, I don't think that. I've got rid of some players that I wasn't using or weren't starting keepers and made some profit on them. So I took the profit so I can build a team. Last week I got close with getting a reward from limited, and it wasn't the best team, but managed to scrape through, but the keeper never started. So what I focused on for this 250 is it has put a span in the works, but it does, for me, because I'm a new starter, it's imperative, I think, for myself to at least try it.
Yeah.
So I strung together most of the limiters I got left. I've picked up some for £6 here and £10 there, cheap, but from selling others to get him.
Yeah.
I haven't sold my rares, so I've kept the rares, but managed to pick up a keeper for cheap as well from selling another keeper. So I've ultimately done it from the players I've got. I've just sold it on with my limited team after game week 250. Is it 251 that goes up to 50? Is it? I'm not entirely sure now, but there will be more. There'll be purpose. It won't just be for 250. There'll be more purpose to it.
Yeah. Because I can only speak from the time that I've been on, which was obviously early. There's not always these opportunities in the weekly specials that Sorare run, where you can just enter a team full of limited cards. So although there is a couple coming up now, unless Sorare change that and then they do allow limited cards in them all, after I think it goes up to game week 25, I don't know what it is, 254 or something.
Yeah.
If that was to stop, then, and I say stop, I mean if Sorare, most of their weekly specials would only open to rare cards or above, then that's the only danger I see. But for me, I think Sorare will start giving the opportunity for limited cards to be in the weeklies, because it gives everyone not the same chance, but it gives everyone a fairer chance, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. If this is just a test to see how popular it is, then it's a great test for them, because they can work out whether or not people like it or not. Because I know you mentioned there is a loophole. Like if Neymar, for example, was injured for 3 games and came back for 2, he'd fall in the category of being available for this game week. And that's just sod's law, isn't it, really, at the end of the day? But that means he still has to perform this game week, where he might not do and others might do. I think we saw he was a player for one of the Belgium teams, and he came on, he was 21, and he scored 2 goals. Like freak stuff that can happen. You just don't know. No one would have picked that guy.
No. And that's the beauty, not just with Sorare, but football in itself.
Yeah, that's what I enjoy about football.
It's what I've argued with people from being on the platform. Although unlikely, any player can score 100 in any particular game week.
Yes.
All you're hoping is, especially for this game week, that all your fallout for your players have their games of their lives. They all score or assist or do something. And then, you could potentially win a top card for little investment. So again, I think it's a fantastic idea what Sorare have done. You wouldn't recall, because it was way, way before your time, and I was speaking to some person on Twitter about this. There was a special game week around about 6 months ago, and because of obviously the difficulties with goalkeepers, price, etc., because they are expensive.
Yes.
This was obviously before the limited cards came out. Sorare done a special weekly, and all the prize pool were all goalkeepers.
Oh, no way.
So that was, for me, like, I'm hand on heart, I don't win many cards. It's not how I've tried to play the game. I've tried to win my F, and if I won a card on the way as well, happy days. However, that game week, it was, like I said, it was one of their special weeklies, and I finished 21st in that, and I won a very, very good Asian goalkeeper. I say a very, very good. I don't even know, because I sold him because I don't concentrate on Asia.
Yeah.
But at the time, I think he was worth about 600 quid.
That's amazing. What a cool concept.
Absolutely. And for, as you all know, a low budget player, to have a player worth 600 quid,
Yeah.
he was one of the most expensive players in my gallery at the time. That's a lot of money for me then to go and rebuild whatever team I wanted to do, especially back then, because 600 quid, it would probably be worth, I don't know, 2.5 grand in today's Sorare. So I could revamp my whole global F grinding team, if you like, with better quality. And if it was to happen today, I could obviously build a strong limited team for that amount, including a goalkeeper, you know. So
yeah, well, I'm looking at the prizes now, and I again, this is hypothetical, and you do need a lot of things to go your way. But if you manage to get in the top 50, okay, so between 16 and 50, you'll get a tier 3 super rare.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know, super rares are pretty expensive, basic anyway. So this could change your team. So if you did start today and invested 100, 150 quid, and then, you know, everything went your way, you won a tier 3 super rare, then you could be completely revamping your team and moving on. That's a great opportunity, I think.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And, you know, Sorare have come under criticism of late, rightly so, in my opinion. However, when things like this happen and they create opportunities like this, they should be applauded for doing so also, you know, because it's not, you know, not without, I don't want to go into detail about people, what their opinions on me, but I think, you know, I am critical sometimes of Sorare. However, when credit or praise needs to be given, I'll do that. And for me, this is outstanding opportunity for anyone, because I'm of the belief, like I said, any player can hit 100. If you're lucky that your players perform this particular game week, you could potentially win life-changing, massive amounts of money. Do you know what I mean? And, you know, I think I keep repeating myself, but for me, it's an outstanding opportunity. So that's my opinion on it, and I totally agree where you're coming from. In terms of, you said you've just been on over a month. If you could, had you not started a month ago, but you knew now what you know, if that makes sense, if you knew all the details of Sorare, what would you do differently than you would have 5 weeks ago when you first started?
What would I do differently?
Yeah, what would you do different? Like any mistakes that you've made, you know, depending on what, you might not have made any mistakes since you've started. You might be happy with how you've played the game so far, and you thought, yeah, this is cool. I'm happy the way I'm going. So you might not think any different. Yeah. You might not have done anything differently. However, if you have, or you believe you have, would there be anything differently if you were to open an account today?
What I would do differently, so I made multiple purchase, deposits, and I think you have a video on that and how to avoid paying fees.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have deposited multiple times. I would have made one big deposit if I was going to do that, and that's about it. I've done like weekly deposits, if anything. I would have then gone in with a plan rather than just picking up random limiteds, and tried researching players before actually getting them. I did basic research, but now being on platform over a month, I've done a lot more research and understanding players a bit more, where you can pick cheap ones up that are playing well or underperforming at that time. Apart from that, I would look, if you have excess money inside your account after buying things like the rares and the limited, I would then look forward 3 or 4 months to see what's coming up or teams coming back in, because their players, everyone knows that their players are down about, I don't know, 50% in price. And as soon as the competition comes back in, they spike. So that's an easy moneymaker right there.
I agree. There's a lot of, like, only now because I've obviously been on a platform, but you've identified it much earlier than I did. The amount of planning you've got to make to try and take advantage of all these things is massive, in my opinion. The more research, the more planning you do, it can only help, you know, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
well, that's hindsight for you, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely it is. But it's good to see that you've identified it much sooner than I certainly did. Because at the time, I was like an idiot, just going out, buying player after player, not really knowing what I was doing. So that would be like a regret of mine. Obviously not as costly as it would be now, because the players were much cheaper, but it was still a mistake. And I would argue I bought quantity over quality. I just wanted loads and loads of players to give me all the options for teams. But in hindsight, I would change, you know, if I could go back 18 months, I'd obviously do certain things differently. And I think everyone who's joined the platform has made a mistake at one stage, and they would do things differently. So it's good to hear what you believe you've done. Maybe not wrong, wrong's not the right word, but what you would do differently. And it's good you've identified that, I think.
I think it's learning from other people, so yourself, so we're in a budget, and other people's videos that I've watched. It's helped a lot.
Yes, absolutely. Because you know, there's so much content out there now on different sort of platforms. And for me, it's only good because the advertising side of things was Sorare. As you're probably aware, Sorare don't really market Sorare. They wait for clubs to onboard and then tweet it.
Yeah.
And then, so all the YouTube stuff, the Twitter stuff, the Twitch, you know, it's all good stuff because it's getting Sorare out to people. Like you said, you found it off Facebook or Twitch, you know.
It's Facebook gaming, yeah.
Absolutely. So again, the more content that's out there, the better for Sorare to succeed, because ultimately we all want this platform to succeed and to grow. And this thing, in my opinion, could absolutely go parabolic. It could go mental. You know, there's 100,000 users now. There was 500 when I started 18 months ago. So you can see the growth there.
Jeez, yeah.
If that was to, you know, multiply itself again in 18 months' time, you're talking crazy numbers. And that's, as a user, every user should want the same thing for it to, because it's obviously going to benefit everyone.
Yeah, the last big league is the Prem, isn't it? That's the last one to come on.
Yeah. Now, I've got a different opinion on most, because I don't think that's the key for me. As it's a global platform, obviously the Premier League is the best league in the world. I don't think many people would argue with that. However, Sorare as a company, it's relatively new. I believe, as it's a global platform, because of the cost involved, my opinion would be Sorare should try and tie up every league in the world, because it would probably cost less than it would just to get one Premier League in.
That's true.
And I think for it to be a global product, I know the argument against it. Well, if you want it to be a global product, you've got to have the best league in the world. But I think the cost of it for a newish company is putting all their eggs in one basket, and that could backfire, in my opinion. Because if they do sign up with the Premier League for, I don't know, 700 million quid, for argument's sake, and the numbers don't come on as quickly as Sorare would like,
Yeah.
then is that putting the platform in jeopardy? I don't know. And I'm not scaremongering. I'm trying to ask questions that I would like to know. But for me, global platform, global product, it should have as many leagues as possible and not necessarily concentrate on the English Premier League. Like for me, and I don't know whether it's because I am or Welsh, for me, I love looking at like Turkish league players I've never heard of. That's the special thing for me.
Yeah.
You know, and like the Premier, I got no doubt the English Premier League comes on, the players, for a low budget player, I'm not going to be able to afford any of them because everyone will want them. And the one good thing with that, perhaps, is good value players will be even cheaper in the Turkish league because people will be possibly selling certain parts of their gallery to fund that. Hence, their prices are lower, and these players that they're selling are arguably better than the ones they want to buy in the Premier League. Because I've always said reputation means nothing to me on Sorare. It's all about the player's score. I don't give a damn where he plays. If he's consistently hitting good scores, I want him. And that's all that matters to me. So, but it's a very difficult subject, I think, because I understand the arguments why people want the English Premier League. I'm not stupid. It's, you know, it would bring a huge audience, but potentially, obviously. But so if there was one thing you could change about Sorare, what would it be? Like, for example, my argument would be common goalkeepers are allowed in rares and not in the limited teams. That needs to change, in my opinion. Common card should be allowed to be used in the limited because the limited was brought out for the average man, and it doesn't make sense to me. So that would be my change I would want to introduce. But
yes, I like that change. Possibly a different, same idea, but slightly different. Where I would, when you start, it would be nice if they give you like a starting goalkeeper, a starting limited, even if it's a tier 3, whatever. That'd be quite nice. But you couldn't sell him, or so I don't know, something like that. So again, with not being able to afford a goalie for limited, but I still think the common keeper being used in the race should still stay because not everyone can afford 700 quid of a goalkeeper there either.
Yeah, I see your point. It's just
that would literally limit me, and I could not. I don't even know if there's cheap goalkeepers out there. 400, 500 quid for a goalie.
Yeah.
Just to compete. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. But apart from that,
I get where you're coming from. I understand that. But for the reasons I've given, the limited teams, you know, starting on your budget, if you were allowed to use a common goalkeeper in your limited team, if you had 600 quid, you could get a very, very good team for that.
Oh, yeah, massive.
You know, the problem is the goalie. And that's where my issue is, because if you want a decent limited goalkeeper, like I own Lars Ennerstall, and okay, he's a good goalie, but I think he costs like 200 odd quid now to buy.
Yeah.
And if you want like and I'm not claiming he's the best goalkeeper, he's one of them in terms of scoring, but that's a lot of money to be invested in a goalkeeper, because at the end of the day, they're one injury away from either being out for 6 months or even worse, their career being over. And then what happens then? If you've started with 600 quid, you've got no more money to put in, and then he goes missing for 6 months. That's the danger for me. And although I think it's good now with the Common League being open for everyone, because again, from my experience, you do win a lot of common goalkeepers as prizes. However, you can only use one. You can obviously use them in your training team, which is useful. However, if they were allowed to enter the limited league. I think that would bring more interest into low budget players in concentrating on a proper limited team or a more expensive limited team, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So in terms of your ambitions on Sorare, like I said, with your permission, I'd love to do this on a bi-monthly, just to get you on, and you know, how much
Hopefully I
is your,
progress.
yeah, how have you progressed, what's your gallery worth, etc. Have you changed your outlook, what you're planning on doing? So your ambitions on Sorare, I take it as soon as you possibly can. I'm assuming this, I don't know whether this is your plan. If you do win a few cards along the way, a few F, is your ambition to plough it back into Sorare to improve your team, or to withdraw it? You know, what is your plans and what are your ambitions?
If my rare team is quite successful and does its ETH grinding business, then I'm going to take out a majority of the money just to, you know, keep myself safe. At least I haven't get to a stage where I'm quite comfortable almost taking all my investment out, and then it really starts for me. At the moment, of course, it's I've invested money. Let's hope things don't change and try and grind some money back out. Yeah, I'd like to take my investment back out and then continue with the game. That's cool. That'd be nice.
I think that's a sensible way to play it, and what I always advise anyone who's recently started, aim to get your investment back ASAP. Yeah. And you know, you've got no worries, and you can, because at the end of the day, the game is all about fun first and foremost for me.
Yeah.
If you can make money on top, even better. Happy days. However, if you're worrying, because, and I'm not suggesting Sorare is going to go down their route, but there has been platforms in the past that have just disappeared almost overnight and run off with people's money. I'm not stupid enough to think that there's no people worried about, they've got, I don't know, $2,000 in Sorare, and they're thinking, well, what if it goes bust, or you know, it doesn't go to plan. So in my opinion, if you got to the stage where you're playing risk-free, that's the position everyone needs to try and get to.
Yes.
As soon as possible, because it just relieves all the pressure from you, because you know, not that you want to see Sorare go down, but you haven't got the worry thinking, Christ, I've lost 500 quid, you know, like exactly. People did on other platforms. And however, I just want to stress, I'm not suggesting Sorare, because in my opinion, it's a different beast to football index, but stock and everything else. There's no comparison, in my opinion. The people who are running Sorare, I've had my issues with them, but I truly believe these people they know what they're doing, you know, and I've got complete confidence in them. There's obviously improvements they can make. I'm sure they will at some stage, and sooner the better, i.e. the rewards for one. So
yeah, I think NFTs is the future. Just quickly jumping back, you asked one thing to improve, and that would be possibly having a is it a stable coin opposed to ETH, because ETH's so up and down. And if it did go to the moon, you know, if it did go super high per ETH, anyone who's starting off would, I don't know how you even get started. You'd get nothing.
They'd have to bring in another decimal, and that would be the only realistic way I could see if they kept that in. But again, prior to your time joining Sorare, there was talk, I believe it was on an AMA, that they was looking, or Sorare were looking into a possibility of introducing a stable coin. So your players only go up and down in value based on performance, which to me seems to be,
that's fair.
It seems to be the correct way, because, and I'm going against how I profited, because obviously, like I said, player prices were low when I joined. ETH was really low. A lot of my profit has come from things that I haven't actually had any part of, if that makes sense. I've benefited hugely with ETH, almost 16, 17 times in value at some stages, you know. So people would say, well, you haven't done anything for that, and rightly so, because I didn't. So in fairness, I'm all for players' prices going up and down based on performances, because that's what it should be about.
Yes.
So I would be in favour of a stable coin. However, I know I've had this debate on Twitter for a while with certain people who are more crypto minded than me, who say the minute that they brought that in, they'd leave the platform. So it's not,
Right.
so because they believe in the crypto element and the Ethereum. But I understand both sides of the argument, because I'm getting more knowledgeable now about crypto than I had no idea about crypto before starting Sorare. So I get the arguments for both sides, but my personal preference is a stable coin, I've got to say.
Yeah.
So, you know, so Bithorse, I just want to thank you once more for coming on. I really appreciate it. And I think it's a great insight, especially for new users. And hopefully they can learn from what you've had to say on this video. So I really appreciate you coming on. And like I said, in 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever convenient with you, if I can get you back on,
Yeah.
and then hopefully your gallery's worth £1 million and we're all celebrating. You know, you've won game week 250, you've won your unique.
There we go, yeah.
And you're in the Bahamas doing the next video.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
That's all right. But in a serious note, if that's okay with you, I'll aim to get you
all
back
good,
on sometime in April, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much for coming on once again. Much appreciated, mate. And all the best for this game week, especially 250.
Thank you very much on yourself.
All right. Thanks.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Cheers now. Ta-ra.